So as far as I know, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the name itself is interesting because it means someone who's become aware that all things under the sun get old and you get disgusted, and all of us have a temple, and we imagine that this temple is profoundly pristine, nothing is going to contaminate it, but time passes and you realize it's not really as interesting. And you think back and you kind of are disgusted by yourself for all the time and energy you spent. There is this wonderful poem that we have in Persian where a father looks at his son and says, "When are you going to be a human being? Amount to something valuable." And the son is brokenhearted by his father's comments, so he walks away, leaves the house, and he goes to school and he becomes very famous, and he's got a big mansion and a few cars. But when he is profoundly prosperous, he tells one of his servants, "Go fetch my father, tell him to come by and take a look at what I have become, because he told me I wouldn't amount to anything." And so the father is fetched, and they see each other after like 10, 15, 20 years. And his father's head is both bowed down, he's not gazing in the son's eye, but the son recognizes his father and looks at him and says, "Remember me, Dad? You told me I wouldn't amount to anything. Look at me. I have 50 Teslas and 25 mansions. Look at all these gold watches I have." And the father looks at him and says, "I didn't say you won't get rich. I didn't say you won't have watches and cars and mansions. I said you will never turn out to be a decent human being. Being a human being is very different than being rich." And so the son is brokenhearted once again, because he comes to realize that it is true that you could be very prosperous on the outside. And if your outside, your exterior life is defining who you're on the inside, you're still profoundly poor. I say this because about 5,000 years ago, you have this kid named Gilgamesh. And the name itself means someone who's been around, who's accumulated a lot of wealth on the outside, who has a lot of power, and is profoundly attractive because he is made by the gods. Because Gilgamesh is preferred by the gods, he's intoxicated. He's intoxicated by the power given to him, by how attractive he is and how women like him. He is intoxicated or drunk by the fact that he is a king of Uruk. But despite being rich in so many different facets of life, once in a while he reflects and he says, "I don't know why, but nothing is enough." But the most devastating aspect of his reflection is, I see people come and go. In other words, I see people born and then they die. And yes, the parents or the son or the aunt or the uncle or the wife, they cry a little bit, they lament a little bit, and after 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, they forget. What Gilgamesh comes to realize is that from the time you're born to the time you die, all of life is nothing but struggle. You go to school, you get a degree, you get 5 degrees, you teach classes, you buy cars, houses, this and that. And then you get old, you get sick, and then you die. And sure, at your funeral, 50, 60 people will gather, they'll cry, they'll say all sorts of lies about you. He was a great guy, he was kind and compassionate, the lies that we have to say to survive life. And then when the ceremony is over, they just go about their business. It's an episode that comes from Leo Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich, that there comes a point where the wife says to herself, "My husband is sick, why isn't he just dying? He needs to die. I'm tired of going to Kaiser every single day and visiting him. He's not going to get any better, he just needs to die." And she's not saying that because she's mean-spirited or cruel. The truth is, after a while, just being around someone who's completely useless is burdensome. So Gilgamesh coming to realize that he's going to be forgotten. That's a frightening place to be. I don't know if you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you spend so much time creating a story with your companion where you say, "I love you," she says, "I love you back," you guys buy a house together, or maybe you rent an apartment. And the moment you leave the house to come to Laney to take some crummy classes, she forgets all about you. She's just doing her own stuff. You just don't exist. And that's devastating. And Gilgamesh tries to do all sorts of things to remain relevant, even after death. And one of the things he does is he just bullies people around. And that's one of the nice things that, for those of you who have trauma inside you, let's just say you don't like your father. Your father, man, you may not like him, but he's become memorable. You can't forget this man. It is true that he pisses you off time to time, maybe quite often, and you've gone to therapy for the past 50 years to fix this particular narrative. But the fact that he has done something to you, that he's always present, not very many people can do that for us. We have friends, we have companions, we read books, we watch movies, but rarely do these people remain relevant to us. And so Gilgamesh is stuck. He just doesn't want to be forgotten. He doesn't want to be forgotten because he knows that life is far too distracting, far too demanding, and people will forget. You read a book and you say, man, I love thinking, I love philosophy. And then after a while, philosophy turns into, can we talk about René Descartes? Can we talk about, things that philosophy doesn't much care about? Philosophy is about first falling in love, not to be calculated, not to use your brain as an instrument of rationality, to play chess game with life and yourself. I mean, you have to do it because life is problematic. So if you want to play this game the right way without suffering too much pain and hurt, and if you don't want to suffer as much, make sure you understand this game well. And to understand this game, there's a part of you that must say, this is a very, very serious business. It's a game, it's a joke. The whole thing is a joke. But if you don't understand it and take it seriously, your life will be uprooted. Just look around Oakland. Look at all the tents around. These are people who assume that life should not be taken too seriously. Maybe they should deal with the traumas maybe when they're 50 or 60 or 70. And I'm talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh for one simple reason. About 2-3 years ago, my father and I were sitting down and he looks at me and says, so Amir, tell me, are you going to die? It's usually a question that the son asks the father, not the other way around. So yeah, I guess so, Dad, I'll either see you, being pushed into the ground or you'll see me. It's one of those, can't be any other way. He says, so how do you want to be remembered? And despite the seemingly joking nature of his question and the tone of his question, it had a very serious undercurrent. And then I realized, well, how do I remain relevant and memorable for my kids? I took them to the park, that's how they remember me. I kind of screamed at them, that's how they remember me. And I realized that despite my best attempts to find a place inside them that can, like concrete, not be shattered or broken by life, it's nearly impossible. So I said, you know what, maybe I should record my classes. They're not exempt from the slings and arrows of life. My kids will fall in love and they will be betrayed by love. They will take classes and these classes will bore the hell out of them. Like any other kid, they will suffer from confusion and they may not be at the right place in life to listen to the things I say. And I'm not suggesting that the things I say have any importance or value for other people. Like all other people, I am quite self-deluded and self-deceptive. I think I myself to kind of have some value, my ideas to be somewhat interesting. And like any parent, I like to impose what I have onto my kids. They can trash it later on, but for right now, they're far too young and too incompetent to know right from wrong. And so when you ask, are these audios you talking, the answer is yes, but my intention wasn't about putting them for classes for other people to listen to. It was a very desperate attempt on my part to remain memorable for my kids. Can I tell you another story? When I was 18 or 19, I suffered from the just normal, raw, natural confusion that all 18-year-olds suffer from. Who am I? What am I? What should I do in school? Why do I hate myself, disgusted with myself? Why is it my brother is so prosperous and he's only a year younger than I am? Or my sister who's 8 years, she's a pharmacist and I am like washing cars, all that stuff. And I had no idea what path my life was going to take. And I accidentally ran into a man, this Persian man, heavy set, bushy mustache, really quite aggressive. I remember calling him one time saying, Hussein, this poem by Hafiz when he says, Arz, doesn't it mean like the earth? And he says, you're so uneducated. I can't believe I've spent so many years with you. don't you know Persian? Don't you know the language? What is wrong with you? And he just hung up the phone, and that's a mark of a really, really good teacher. And so for whatever the reasons were, I realized that my confusion can be housed in this man, the way he thinks, the way he feels, the way he talks, the way he looks. And so for the next 10 years, that's what I did. Every week for 3-4 times a week for about 5-6 hours each time, we would go to his house. He would give us some Quran, he would give us some poetry. And then it's been maybe 5-6 years that every single day when I think about where I am in life and the sort of conversation we have in class and at home with my family, I don't think there is a day that goes by where I don't either think of him or mention his name at least 5-6 times. And what he has done for me, for better for worse, right or wrong, he has become eternal in me. And that's not something that happens quite often, where your entire life is mapped out by a stranger in such a way that you just can't forget. And everything about your life revolves around the ideas of this man.